So we're on code.org, Unit 3, Lesson 7, Level 1. So this one is all about the draw loop. All about the draw loop. Okay, this lesson introduces the draw loop, one of the core programming paradigms in GameLab. The class combines the draw loop with random numbers to manipulate some simple animations with dots and then with sprites. Afterwards, everyone is going to use what they've learned today to update their sprite scene from our previous lesson. So our vocab that we've got for today, animation, which is a series of images that creates the illusion of motion by being shown rapidly one after the other. A frame is a single image with an animation, and the frame rate is the rate at which frames in an animation are shown, typically measured in frames per second. So we can go ahead and press continue here.
Animated movies create the impression that characters are moving smoothly, but if you slow them down enough, you'll realize there are lots of individual images. Each image is just a little bit different from the one before. Speed them back up, and your eyes are tricked into thinking you're watching real-life motion. A very simple example of this effect is a flipbook. The key to animation, whether on paper or the computer, is that part of the drawing is changing over time. An easy way to achieve a change is to use the random number command to generate a new random location, size, or color for the shape we're drawing. Here's a simple program that draws a single rectangle with a random X position and a random Y position. If we run and reset this program over and over again, we can see that it draws the rectangle in a new position each time. But that's like a flipbook with only one page. To create real animations, we need to be able to string these pages of the flipbook together. In GameLab, we'll do this using the draw function. The draw function is special in GameLab. The commands inside of the draw function are run line by line from top to bottom. But once the computer reaches the end of the commands inside the draw function, it jumps back to the beginning and repeats the commands over and over again, as long as your program is running. Because the code in the draw function repeats in a loop, we'll just refer to this as the draw loop. Let's move our rectangle inside the draw loop and see what happens. Whoa, so many rectangles! We can see that a rectangle isn't just being drawn once anymore. GameLab is automatically calling the commands inside of the draw loop many times a second. In this program, that means that a new random X and Y location is generated, and then a rectangle is drawn over and over and over. You can place as many commands as you like inside of the draw function. For example, let's choose a new fill color before drawing each rectangle by placing a fill command inside the draw loop. Instead of always choosing the same color, we'll randomize by replacing the red value with the random number command. So in every frame of the flipbook, the computer is picking a new shade of red and setting that as the fill color. Then it picks a new X and Y value and draws a rectangle with those values. In a typical animated movie or flipbook, you don't continue to see all of the drawings that came earlier in the animation. Instead, you have the illusion of a single shape or character moving over time. You'll discover how to make that happen with the draw loop soon.
All right, so what does the draw function do? Okay, it kind of what you said at the end. Okay, it continuously goes through our lines of code, whatever's inside that draw loop. It keeps going through them line by line from the top of the bottom continuously. Then as soon as it gets to the bottom, it starts back over at the top and it goes back through again. Okay. So we're on lesson 7, level 3. So for this one, it says, here's an example of the draw loop at work. Run the code and see how it works. Discuss with your partner whether this looks like the flipbook you saw in the video, why or why not. So we press run. Okay. So we've got this no stroke, fill, see green. We've got a draw loop, this function draw loop, and we've got an ellipse being placed at a random value between 0 and 400. for the X and for the Y. Okay, so that's not like a flip book, is it? Because the flip book is only one image every single time. It's not being pasted over the top. Like if I go to the third page of my flip book, pages 1 and 2 aren't copied over to that, are they? Right? So right now I've got a full screen of ellipses and it's still being run. So it's not really like a flip book. So we've got to figure out a way, and we will here in a few levels, a way of getting a clean sheet every time, right? When you do go to a flip book, you go to the next page, it's a clean white sheet or whatever color you're using, okay? And then you draw your picture again. Then you go to the next sheet, it's clean, and you draw your picture again, okay? So we need to figure out how to get that clean sheet so that it looks like it's actually being animated instead of just filling up space, okay? So go ahead and press finish. So we've got lesson 7, level 4 here, and this one just kind of walks us through the lines of code and how this works. So this one we had that no stroke, set a fill color, and then just put an ellipse being drawn at an X and Y coordinate randomly, and it fills up that space. But if we wanted to do something like that with sprites, okay, my one hint for you, okay, going forward from here is to always look up at the board, is to look and keep these two lines always together. This variable sprite equals create sprite at whatever X and Y coordinate you keep it at. And then the sprite.set animation, whatever you set your animation, those two should always stay together. Okay? And there will be a reason for that later on, and I'll show you. But always keep those two together. Then inside of our draw loop here, we've got our background being drawn every single time, the sprite.x being set to a random value between 200 and 220, and then drawing that sprite. So what it's doing there with those three lines of code within that draw loop is it's setting the background to orange. Okay, so like a fresh sheet, we set it to orange, and then we adjust the sprite's x value between 200 to 220. So say it's here. Okay, and then I draw it. Boom, I drew it. Okay, then what I'm doing is I'm going through my animation again. I'm pasting on an orange background again, picking an X value. It goes here. I pluck it. Done. New orange sheet, new X value, paste it. New orange sheet, new X value, paste it. Okay, so what line is the most important when it comes to that draw function? The changing and setting of that background. That's flipping a new sheet. Okay, so inside your draw loop, think of that background, whatever you set your background color to, as the first and most important thing to do within your draw loop, okay? So always start with that because that starts you with a fresh background. Okay, so go ahead and press continue there. All right, lesson 5, or lesson 7, level 5. So we've got using the draw loop. Now it's your turn to do some work with the draw loop. Remember that the code inside the draw loop is run by GameLab over and over again. Add code to this program so that your drawing has circles being drawn too. Okay, has orange circles being drawn too. Move on when your program looks like it does on the right. So what should I do next? What should be the next line of or block of code that I should drag in? The fill. Okay, where should I drag it? Under ellipse and change it to orange. And then what underneath that? Another ellipse. Okay, now people asked last block, okay, how do I get rid of this 400, 400 at the end? Because I only am putting in 2 random values here. This arrow at the end of this ellipse block, this left arrow, click that twice, and it will get rid of those 2 400s for us. Okay, that way it presets it to 50-50. If you don't get rid of those, your orange circles are going to be really big. Okay, then I need to change and add in this random value between 0 and 400 for both the X and the Y coordinates of my orange ellipses. Okay, so it should look like that. I press run, and now it's good to go. Okay, if your orange circles are too big, it's because you forgot to press that left arrow at the end of the ellipse block and get rid of those 2 400s. Then you didn't put your fill in the right spot. And did you put it inside the draw function? All right, so we go ahead and press finish there. Lesson 7, level 6. So this one we talked about, and this one has my answer from last class, so you'll already see what the answer is. But it says this program has one small difference that'll make it run a little differently. Again, though, remember, all your code outside the draw loop is run first, only one time, and then all your code inside the draw loop is run over and over forever. Okay? So if we go through this line by line, we've got this world.framerate equals 5. And what that's doing is it's just setting the speed at which it's going to print out the frames that you do in your draw loop. Okay, we'll get to that later. Okay, but on line 3, we've got this no stroke, which means that my shapes will do what? What does that do to my shapes? What's no stroke? They won't have a border, right? Okay, so no stroke makes it so that they don't have a border, and then it sets the background to blue and the fill to yellow. Okay, so if I were to end there, I would have a blue background, and then if I were to draw any shapes, they'd be yellow with no border. But I don't. That's not where I end. I have this draw function here that instead sets the background to red and then adds this ellipse randomly on 0 for a random x and a y coordinate every time. So what's really going to happen? Okay, well, the background red is going to make the background red every single time, and it's going to draw over my ellipses from before. So I'm going to have a flashing yellow ellipse randomly throughout the screen at a random location every time, and it's not going to leave the old one there because it's redrawing that red background every single time. So if I press run, I can see that it's going to randomly, every single time that this goes through, it is drawing a red background, placing the yellow dot, drawing the red background, placing the yellow dot, always every single time. Okay, it skips past this background blue because it's painting over it in red every time. Okay, but the no stroke and the yellow fill get carried in. Okay, so I said the program will randomly draw yellow circles on a red background forever. Is what I put in the text box. So now we're on lesson 7, level 7. This one is sprites in the draw loop. It says, by changing the sprites property in the draw loop, you can animate your characters. This animation has also been slowed down. At the beginning of your program, the world.framerate block has been used to set the frame rate to 10. Usually the frame rate is at 30. Feel free to explore different frame rates, run the code to see how it works, discuss with your partner why some code inside the draw loop and some code is outside. So I press run. Okay, and I've got this alien shaking back and forth. Okay, if you notice, my variable sprite on line 2, where it's being created at 100, 200, and my sprite.set animation green alien are together, and they're outside of the draw loop, right? Because like I said, those two lines of code need to stay together. Okay, and they don't ever go, well, they can go, but don't ever put them inside of the draw loop unless I specify otherwise. So those two will always stay outside of the draw loop. Okay, then I've got this function draw, and again, our background is first. It's giving us a fresh sheet every time, and it's putting the background to orange, and then it's changing this sprite's x value, sprite.x, to a random value between 200 and 220, and then it draws that sprite. So again, it's orange background, pick an x value for the sprite between 200 and 220, draw it. Orange background, pick an X, draw it. Orange background, pick an X, draw it. Orange background, pick an X, draw it. Okay, it's doing that rapidly. And that's what our animation is going to look like, okay? So we go ahead and press finish there. Okay, and now this one I'm just going to briefly go over the different values that we can change with our sprites. So we can change the sprite's X value, Y value, the rotation, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Clockwise would be positive, counterclockwise is negative. It starts at 0. If your sprite is straight up and down, that's 0. If you turn it to the right, that's going to be positive. It's going to be clockwise. If you turn it to the left, counterclockwise, that's going to be a negative value. Okay, later on, we'll change it with a random value between -5 and 5. Okay. Our scale is how big it is. Okay, we can set that. And then our visibility is going to be a true or false value. Is our sprite visible or is it not? The sprite's visible. Sprite.visible equals true, means that your sprite is visible. Sprite.visible equaling false means that your sprite is invisible. Okay. So we might do that for like a hidden wall or a hidden key or a level or a platform that's hidden unless you step on like a switch, then it opens up a secret door or whatever we want it to be. Okay. So that the dot next to sprite is called dot notation, and that's the sprite's property. Okay. So the X property, the Y property, things like that. So we'll get into changing those here in a second. So go ahead and press continue. And we've got lesson 7, level 9. Okay, so now in this one, we've got a pencil and a brush. And right now the pencil is moving back and forth, but we want the brush to be able to move back and forth as well. Okay, so if I press run, I can see my pencil shaking, but my brush isn't moving. So where would I go to get my brush to move? Yeah, inside my draw function on line 10, my brush.x is statically set to 300. So I need to change that. What do I change that to? A random number. Now, this stumped the other class. What random number should it be? It was set to 300 before, so what should it be now? 300. How about by 10? Because the other one's 100 to 110. How about we do 300 to 310? Okay, because if I go over here and I go to my on my mouse and I look on my grid, if I look underneath my reset show grid, my X value for my brush is at 300. Okay, so I can't change it to and make it the exact same as the pencil at 100, 110 because it'll do this. Let me show you. Okay, if I change it to 100, 110, just like the pencil, it's just going to go right on top. Okay, I need to make sure that it's got the same or the similar value that it had before at 300, 310, and then press run. Okay, and now it's shaking over there. So I changed that X, the brush's X property to randomize between the X value that I wanted and gave it a cushion of 10. Okay, so you can go ahead and press finish there. Got 2 left and then our assignment here. So this is lesson 7, level 10, and this one's a salt shaker. So now we're going to deal with that Y coordinate of our salt shaker, of our sprite. So we want it to shake up and down, okay, instead of left to right. So if I click run here, my sprite isn't moving, okay? So I need to add a draw loop block to the bottom of this program. So I add a draw loop, this green draw loop, and then I need to put some blocks of code in there. What block should I put in there first? Which one have I been saying that should go first in your draw loop? How do I get that fresh sheet in my draw function? What would give me that fresh sheet, that fresh new color? What do I put in there to get drawn again? Yes, my background. Thank you, Madison. Okay, I'm going to put my background in there because I need my background to be redrawn every time so that I start with a fresh sheet. Okay, I'm going to leave my variable salt and my salt.set animation outside of my draw loop because that one doesn't go in there. And then I'm going to get my salt.y property to change between 200 and 220 every single time. So that one needs to go underneath my background. And then I need to draw it every time as well, my draw sprite. So I have my function, I have my background so that I get a fresh background. And then if I have this salt.y outside of it, it's only going to change that y value once. Remember, anything outside of our draw loop is only done once. Anything inside of it is done forever, infinitely. Okay? And then I need to redraw my sprite. So I press run here, and now it's going to shake it up and down. All right, so we press finish there. Okay, this is the last one before our assignment, lesson 7 to 11. Okay, so on this one, what we've got is this level combines some of the skills that you've already seen. It's drawing ellipses in the background and also updating sprite properties. This time it's changing that sprite rotation property. So this animation is already updating one sprite's rotation property to make it look like it's shaking. So we need to run the program. So if you notice, there's this little white dot that's getting randomly placed all over the map, and then our little green alien is shaking. Okay, all that is if we scroll down here, it's setting that background to black inside of our draw function, and it's creating an ellipse at a random x and y value of the size 5, 5. And if we notice here, there's this no stroke fill white before it. So that's all you need to do in order to create a little star that pops around all over the place. Okay. So we're going to add in we've got the green alien doing this. Now we need to make the pink alien do it. So what do I add in now? Got this green alien dot rotation equals random number -5, 5. What do I add in? The rotation, sprite dot rotation. Okay, and I need to change it to pink alien because that's what this one's called on line 10 and 11. Okay, and then I'm going to change my random number between -5 and 5, and that's referencing the degrees that it's being changed. So -5 is -5 degrees clockwise or 5 degrees clockwise, and 5 is 5 degrees clockwise to the right. Okay, so I press reset and run, and now I've got my pink alien bouncing back and forth, turning left and right. Okay, I press finish there, and what you need to do for your assignment and turn into Google Classroom is you are going to expand upon what you've already done before. And if you notice here, okay, the one that I've got this plane. What you're going to do is if you look up on the board, you need to add a sprite.x, a sprite.y, and a sprite.rotation all within your draw loop to your animation. Okay. If you notice, I've set my frame rate in mind to 5. I've also set, or my variables and my set animations are outside of my draw loop, but my sprite rotation, sprite X, and sprite Y are all inside. And then all of my background elements are also inside of my draw loop as well. Okay. If I want to select multiple lines of code to move them into my draw loop, you can left click and drag, and it'll give you this selection. And then I can drag these wherever I want. Okay. So that is what you need to do. You need to have a sprite.x, a sprite.y, and a sprite.rotation all added to your code and a draw loop. Okay, you need to screenshot that and turn it into Google Classroom. I will freeze this up on the screen for you so that you have an example of something to use. But you might have to take multiple screenshots in order to get all of your code turned into Google Classroom. Make sure that you get your top row with all of the bubbles that are all the way filled in, your name over here so that I know that it's you logged in. And it does help if you, for your grading, if you give me what your output of your code looks like. Okay, so getting this image over here as well also helps with grading, but if you don't have it, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so that's lesson 7, level 12, all right?